with Senator Dave Marsden. I don't think I really need to introduce you to him. You all know Senator Marsden very well. But just to say that he represents Fairfax County here in the 37th Senate District. Prior to that, representing the 41st House District, and before that, having a long and distinguished career in Virginia government. This senator this year really, I think, was extraordinary in going out there and being the chief patron on the bill in the Senate to raise the minimum wage, to be out there talking to his colleagues every day and doing something that I think a lot of folks thought was impossible to do, which was making sure that our state Senate in Richmond actually passed an increase in the minimum wage, and not a little one, but a vote that would have raised the minimum wage from $7.25 to $8.25 this year, and to $9.25 the next year. So please, a big round of applause for Senator Dave Marsden.
Thank you so much, David. That video that I asked David to show today, I found it on the Virginia's premier conservative blog site called Bearing Drift. And the guy who posted it said, "Hey guys, I don't mean to go full socialist on you, but you really need to look at this." And of course, he immediately got shot down by all his fellow travelers in that blog circle. But even they get it. They won't admit it, but even they get it. So much of this and the opposition to these things is driven by primary Republican politics. The fear of losing in a primary if you look to raise the minimum wage, or put Medicaid out there, or vote for a woman's right to make decisions for her own health care. A lot of these people don't believe that, but they know what's going to happen to them in a primary. I think Joe May last year in a primary. I think Beth Sherwood out in Winchester. They voted for the transportation package and they paid the price. God bless them for having the courage to do it. We need more people like that. But I did this year introduce a bill to increase the minimum wage to $8.25 next year and $9.25 the year after that. And I had several Republican senators come to me and says, you know, if we raise the minimum wage, we don't have to worry so much about how many people are going on Medicaid because we solve the problem that way. And I said, yeah, well, doesn't it make sense to pay people the value of their labor and what they're doing for a living and contributing to this economy rather than create a social welfare network of Medicaid payments? And they went, yeah, but we can't go there. So they're caught between that rock and that hard place, between how they're going to solve these problems. I have spent the last 10 days, I'm calling everybody who sends me an email saying that I don't want to expand, that I don't want you to expand Medicaid. I call everyone, I don't care if they're in my district or not. And most of the conversations go like this. I said, well, tell me what you know and why do you feel that way? He said, well, first off, the federal government's going to renege on this. Second, we're moving towards socialism. And third, I don't like the president. And then I explained Marketplace, Virginia, which is the Senate version of how we did Medicaid expansion, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a very interesting concept. It privatizes it. We create an exchange of private insurance company. They determine your eligibility. You call in, you have your voucher to choose. They do managed care. You don't just take your Medicaid card around and to as many doctors as you want. They manage your care, which keeps costs down. You can be held responsible for up to 5% of your income based on a sliding scale to contribute to it, and you have to be looking for work if you're not employed. You know, that's a pretty significant move, and people go, yeah, you know, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you make some good points there, and then by the end of the conversation go, well, I still don't believe we should do that because the federal government's going to renege on it. It's socialism, and I hate the president. And that's what you get. But it's the only way I can think of to reach out to these folks and make the case for Medicaid expansion. But you've seen it. This film, that I've shown it to so many people, my conservative friends, and they look at it and they shake their heads. But what we're dealing with is what's called closely held belief. You can show a movie, you can show all the facts in the universe, to refute something, but if they've heard it from a source that they trust, or that they're following, or that they think is legitimate, and what have you, you're going to have to work very, very hard to change that mind. And probably they'll have to go through a transformational experience with someone they know and love, or themselves. Look what happened with the gay marriage issue here in the United States. What happened? Everybody suddenly knew people who were coming out, and they said, well, they're not, these are good people. I said, that's what we've been trying to tell you. And so, through experience, you know, they learned, and all of a sudden we've had a monumental shift in opinion about the rights of people to get married. And the courts are backing it up now, and this is a battle that's going to be won. And this battle will be won someday here in the near future. But we've got to get people to understand, and what's going to happen is when their children can't get ahead, when their children can't make a living, they're going to start questioning some of those things that they believe all these years, and we're going to get changes. You know, we could go through the minimum wage arguments here. It's not just kids. There's 123,000 Virginians who are in this situation. If we raise the minimum wage to $9.25 in 2 years, you'd start raising the wages of people who are now making above the minimum wage, $8.50 or $9. I told my colleagues in the House, I said, guys, I totally figured this out. How many of you consider this a full-time job? And some of them went, yeah, here you go. Well, if we raise the minimum wage to $9.25, we're going to have to raise your salary because you'll be in the legislature for less than the minimum wage. That's how bad it's gotten in this country. And we have to do something about it. When I took the bill over to the House of Delegates, Terry Kilgore, he's a friend of mine. I love Terry. He's from far southwest Virginia, and he believes what he believes, but he's a good person in a lot of respects. And I went up to him, I said, Terry, it's snowing out there. I can't get my witnesses down here. You know, can we hold this off to your next meeting? And he said, oh, yeah, you know the speaker. He wants to get this out of the way. Of course, this was about 7:30 in the morning. And, but what occurred to me, and as I was looking at this is all about having faith in this country to raise the minimum wage. I decided, I don't know if all of you remember, some of you might. Remember the Kingston Trio? Anybody ever remember the song Desert Pete? Desert Pete, there you go, I got one over here. Desert Pete's a story about an old hermit lives in the desert. And there's a dried up old spring and a pump. And Desert Pete keeps a bottle of water under the pump. And he says, when people come along and they find the pump, they look at the note, and the note says, look, I know you're thirsty. I know you want to drink this right now. But you got to have faith and believe. You've got to prime the pump. There's water down there, and if you put the water into the pump and get it going, you'll have all the water you can hold, wash your face, cool your feet, but leave the bottle full for others. Thank you kindly, Desert Pete. And that's what this country has to have the faith to do. We have to give up the notion that I can't run my business if I pay people 1 penny more than $7.25 an hour, which is nonsense. If we raise the floor for everybody, everybody will be in the same competitive position. It's not going to change. But we'll get people, you know, off of support programs. The scariest thing that I saw when I was presenting this bill in front of the House was one of the delegates started going, hey, though, couldn't we fix this income problem with something with the earned income tax credit? Guys are shoving and saying, shh. They wanted to solve this problem of low wages with another federal program of support, which they also are against. They're in a tough spot. It's up to us to get out there, to get the word out, to make the calls, to work the phones, to get the message out. These people are not beyond understanding once they get the message clear to them that it's them we're talking about. It's your kids we're talking about. It's not Democrats or Republicans, it's Americans. And we have got to fix the minimum wage problem. We have got to fix the income disparity problem in this country, because I'll tell you one thing that history has taught us. We argue about debts, deficits, revenues. That's part of politics. We'll be arguing about that hundreds of years from now. But when disparity gets this bad, societies can get disrupted in very troubling ways. Think France in 1792.
That didn't end well. Russia, 1917. That ended even worse. We have got to realize that we've got to fix this problem. We've got to restore the American dream. And I just thank all my fellow panelists for being here tonight to make that case. And I know you guys are on the team. It's a question of how hard we want to work and how we want to get that message out there. We can win this fight. Thank you very much.
Really, I can't say enough for how hard the senator worked, and we're also glad to have Brent from the senator's office, who was there working with a lot of advocates to make sure this happened. So, thank you. I appreciate, as the senator said, this is, it is very common for us to say this happens to somebody else, right? We're talking about high school kids working a job after school, and that's not true. And as the senator said, we are talking about Americans, and so we're very happy to have one of those Americans with us here this evening, Mr. Trevon Snead, who is currently a department manager at McDonald's, where he's worked for the past year and a half. Trevon has been a leader in the movement here in Virginia, but that is happening around the country, of fast food workers rising up and saying no more, saying we deserve a living wage for our hard work, saying we deserve a union in our work, we deserve to be treated with dignity. In December, he bravely led a one-day strike of fast food workers, and just this past week, he led an effort to speak out against the wage theft that the McDonald's Corporation is committing against hardworking Americans every day in a million different ways, that they are not paying their folks for hours worked, asking people to work extra time, not paying them overtime, asking them to come in but not clock in, as if minimum wage work wasn't enough. They are committing really terrifying wage theft every day. So I'd like to introduce you to one of these very brave Americans, Trevon Snead.
How was everyone? My name is Johnson, and I'm going to talk about my job at McDonald's. I've been working there for about a year and a half. I started as a crew member, making $7.25, and over a year I've stepped up twice. They've moved me up to management, and then they moved me up to department manager. So I've been in a position, made $7.25, and had to struggle through trying to get my own place, get my own car, save so I can have that kind of stuff myself. But instead, I've been stuck in my home, stuck with my parents and all, not being able to save any money in order to get to that point. But even though they saw my hard work and they moved me up to management, and then even then, making $9, it's still hard. It didn't help that much at all. So what I like to say is, once I've been here, I saw that they came in, I saw this program called Raise Up. They came into my store and I saw it all over the TV and all. So I thought to myself, that's what I want. I wanted to join that, help that movement, help all those others out there that's going through the same thing that I'm going through. I want them all to bring them together and, raise up as one so we can all, make more money and have a union. So when those companies do those things that they're not supposed to be doing, come together and say we deserve respect. Not be put through these kinds of things, not working through our breaks, not being able to eat, having to keep on helping, coming in and having to sit and wait because labor's high, so they can't afford to work you and all that. It's too much. So I'm here with Guillermo. We're here trying to, gain more people. So I'm here for support for those under me as well as on the same level as me. And I just want to thank you.
And as Trevon mentioned, he's here with Guillermo Zamora. Guillermo is an organizer working with these fast food workers in a campaign called Raise Up. Guillermo has been a labor organizer for the past 5 years, from Los Angeles to Australia, but now back home in Virginia, where Guillermo grew up and attended VCU. Sorry, that didn't turn out better this tournament than it could have. But is doing really vital work, and here to talk a little bit more about the campaign and how everybody here can assist with this effort.
It's a trip being here. Last time I was in this building was for prom, so it's nice to see life come full circle. I've been with the Raise Up campaign since July of 2013. We started off in Raleigh, North Carolina because of the momentum of the Moral Mondays movement there, spearheaded by Reverend William Broder. There was this resurgency of progressive politics and progressive thinking that was happening in Raleigh about, voter ID, restrictions, housing, cutting unemployment, defunding public services. So we really jumped on the momentum that the NAACP and other allied groups have started in Raleigh. And we had our first strike, part of the national campaign in August. We struck across 40 stores in 3 cities. And since then, we've moved on to Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, and we're moving to Alabama and Tennessee for the next strike. So we are growing. The expectation for the South was always really low.
Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't have the same union tradition as the northern states or the West Coast, but we've really blown everyone away because the workers are really hungry for this. Because they are working and they're still staying poor. I cannot emphasize that enough. The people, there's a huge working poor class out there that are working for a $200 billion industry and not barely scraping by. UC Berkeley did a study and they found that 1 out of 2 fast food workers is on some kind of government assistance. This costs us as taxpayers $7 billion a year. So McDonald's, who made $5.5 billion in profit last year, some of that's our money because we subsidize this company, this $5.5 billion company, to underpay its people to pick up the slack. But we could use that $7 billion elsewhere, anywhere else really. But the fast food workers are stepping up and they're making noise. And what's really remarkable about what we're doing in the South is because the odds are so stacked against us. There's a culture of, I don't know. It hasn't been done in a while, so people forget that it can be done. A Bloomberg article ranked Richmond and Atlanta as the hardest place for social mobility for low-income workers. So because the expectation was low, what we've done in Virginia and all over has really blown everyone away. These workers are breaking cultures of fear, stepping up loud and proud. And this is important not just for them, but just for all of American workers, because the logic behind this campaign is teachers, engineers, police fighters. It's hard to advance their pay, which isn't really enough, until like millions of low-wage workers also come up. A low ride raises, all boats, and that's what this campaign is about. We're focusing on the lowest jobs in the economy, raising them up, and that's going to bring prosperity and more opportunities to everybody. So thank you for your support, and yeah, keep watching us because we're not going anywhere until we win $15 in the union.
So thank you, Guillermo and Trevon. We're going to have some information at the end about how you can assist these efforts. So you've heard the personal compelling stories. Frankly, I can't imagine. I could not be able to provide for my daughter, for my family on 7/25. I could not be able to do that, being asked to work through breaks and not get paid for that, to not even have the opportunity to eat during the day, are things that I think a lot of us take for granted. So thank you for sharing your stories with us. Up next, we've invited Jeff Connor-Naylor from the Commonwealth Institute to, having heard some of those personal stories, to give us a little bit of the landscape. What are the numbers behind the minimum wage? What does that mean in Virginia? What does that mean here in Northern Virginia? Where, there are no working poor people in Northern Virginia, right? Right? We don't talk about it here, and we talk about how wealthy our communities are, and there is a lot of wealth, but we've also seen the videos about how that wealth is distributed. So for folks who aren't familiar with the Commonwealth Institute, I can't say enough good work about them, and urge everyone to check out their work. What's the website, Jeff?
TheCommonwealthInstitute.org.
So TheCommonwealthInstitute.org, they do tremendously good budget, fiscal analysis. They have provided much of the numbers and the work behind the minimum wage fight, behind the Medicaid expansion fight, and for all their good fiscal analysis, they never forget the impact that these policies have on working families and on medium and low income families, and they do incredibly good work, and we're very lucky for a Richmond-based think tank to have Jeff here in Northern Virginia. I think he is one of our great policy secret weapons, so hit him up after and make sure we figure out good ways to get him involved. But right now I'd like to have Jeff Connor-Naylor come up.
Thank you for having me here tonight on this glorious spring evening. So as David said, the Commonwealth Institute is a non-profit, non-partisan policy research and advocacy organization. Our work focuses on how Virginia economic and fiscal policy impacts low and middle income Virginians. So our work covers a wide range of issues, including the budget, taxes, healthcare, education, and programs that make up the safety net. All of our reports are available to the public on our website. We also have a blog that provides short tidbits of timely information called the halfsheet.org. And you can access that from our website as well. And of course, I'm in Northern Virginia, and we are willing to always speak about our work to any group that's working in Virginia. So more than 4 years after the end of the recession, families, even families in Northern Virginia, are struggling. Recent analysis shows that Virginia faces record levels of inequality that threaten families and workers, but also threaten our state's economic stability and long-term prosperity. So on the surface, things look good. Over the last 30 years, median wages in Virginia have increased at 3 times the national rate of growth. However, when we begin to look a little closer, when we look at the entire wage spectrum, we see that unequal growth in wages has been occurring in Virginia for decades, with the top income earners getting more ahead and the lowest income earners falling behind. Since the recession alone, the top 10% of workers have seen their wages increase by 8%, while the bottom 10% have seen their wages decrease by 7%. As a result of these trends, middle class and low income workers, which make up a bulk of our population, are not able to purchase the goods and services that Virginia's economy is capable of producing. So of course it doesn't have to be this way. If we raise the minimum wage, workers would have more money in their pockets to spend on goods and services in the community. However, the minimum wage has not kept up with inflation. In 1968, a worker who was earning the minimum wage, working full-time throughout the entire year, was able to support a family of 3 just above the poverty line. Today, that same worker would not be able to support a family of 2 above the poverty line. Also, most of Virginia's workers who would benefit from raising the minimum wage are working full-time, and they're not kids. We're talking about workers that have families and are main contributors to their families. If we were to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, 87% of workers who would benefit would be above the age of 20. And 47%, hold on 1 second, let me make sure I have that right. And workers who would benefit essentially supply about half of their family's income. So we're not talking about kids here who are looking for a summer job, who are looking for a job after school. Also, raising the minimum wage is good for the economy as well. Every dollar increase in the minimum wage results in $3,500 in new consumer spending over the next year per household. Also, most of the workers who earn the minimum wage now work for large corporations. Definitely a majority work for those folks, and some, but certainly not all, or even close to all, work for small businesses. So to sum up, living in Virginia looks great. However, when we break it down, we see that upper income earners are getting ahead, and lower income earners are falling behind. By raising the minimum wage, we put more money into the pockets of workers so that they can buy the goods and services that the economy is capable of producing, which of course is good for families, workers, and good for Virginia's state economy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And again, I strongly urge people to go to thecommonwealthinstitute.org. They have tremendously good info, and the only reason that I sound sometimes intelligent on this. So our last speaker before we open up for questions, and we're eager to hear your questions, your thoughts, how do we work on this together. Very pleased to introduce Kevin Pittman, the president of the Fairfax Deputy Sheriff's Union. Kevin, many of you know, is a 17-year veteran of the Sheriff's Department, has served as president of the union since 2008, and as secretary for nearly a decade before that. Before his nearly 2 decades in the Sheriff's Department, served our country in the armed forces before that. He is here to talk about the relationship of the labor movement with how do we make sure that all workers raise up. It is great to see a number of labor leaders here, from Mike Mueller with the firefighters, to Kimberly Adams with FEA, to a lot of my sisters and brothers from SEIU, and apologies to anyone here I missed. So Kevin's going to talk again about the role the labor movement plays with addressing income inequality.
First of all, I'm glad I went after the fact check. That always intimidates people when they stand here and start citing figures. My name is Kevin Pittman. I am president of Fairfax Deputy Sheriff's Union. We are an affiliate of the Service Employees International Union, Virginia 512. You know, I'm going to talk about the relationship between labor and this issue. But first, after having seen that video, where we see this laid out in front of us, I think the first question we need to ask ourselves, is this an issue? Is it an issue? Personally, I think it is. And once we recognize that it's an issue, what's the cause of that issue? Is this simply the free market picking winners and losers, or are there other factors at play? So first of all, I'm going to talk about why this is an important issue for organized labor. Obviously, it's a no-brainer. It's about wages. It's also about social justice, which organized labor has always been an important player in social justice issues from the civil rights movement on through today. So I'm proud to be a part of that legacy. Organized labor has been responsible for pulling tens of millions of Americans out of poverty over the last 6 or 7 decades. And I think it's important that we remember that that is the historical role that unions have played in this country. We hear discussions today about labor unions being dinosaurs, that there's no use for them today. It's a thing of the past. It was needed at some time, but we're advanced beyond that point. I don't believe that. I don't believe that based on what we just saw right here. The reason that I'm correlating what we've seen on that chart to organized labor is because there's been a dramatic decline in the United States of the power of organized labor. And I think many economists at this point agree, and the data is out there, that there's a direct correlation between the two. That when you reduce millions of Americans' ability, working Americans, middle-class Americans, working poor, when you reduce their voice in the political arena, this is what happens. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm so glad that we're having this discussion because this is happening in Fairfax County. You know, this is not something that's happening elsewhere across the country. This is something that's happening in our own neighborhoods, in our own community, to people that we care about. This is happening to my son. This is happening to your grandchildren, your children. We have to decide in this country, what is the future of America? Are we going to build an economy that works for everyone? Or are we simply just going to continue to reward that top 1% that has increased political power dramatically because of income inequality? And that's a topic that we haven't talked about today, and I am getting a little bit off subject. I can't talk about this issue staying in those narrowly defined roles because there is a corrosive element to our democratic institutions because of income inequality. That threatens all of us. One interesting little figure that I pulled off was that there were 2 private citizens in the 2012 election cycle that spent almost 3 times as much money in political action as the 10 top labor unions combined. Those 10 top labor unions represent tens of millions of Americans. And so this is what income inequality allows to happen in this country. Income volatility is another result of this disparaging income inequality. The odds of the average working American receiving a 50% drop in income in this country, the chances of that have more than doubled since 1970. We have more Americans that are losing their defined benefit pensions. We're going to 401ks where the entire risk of that falls upon the individual. Companies are no longer responsible for funding retirements, getting good pensions. Now they're not responsible for providing health care benefits. Who picks up the slack? You do. The taxpayer. That's who picks up the slack. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up here because we've really gone over, but it's important that we strengthen our labor organizations because labor and I always love speaking to a friendly audience. Organized labor is the counterweight to the other side, to that top 1% and the influence they can buy. And public sector has dug in their heels, and we still represent oddly 22%, but the private sector, 7%. I don't have to tell you guys because you are an engaged audience, you know what's going on out there. There's a couple of asks before I leave the podium that I would like to ask from the FCDC. One of them is to push for a stronger relationship here in Fairfax County between organized labor and party. Support us. And the other is to work with us to hold our elected officials accountable for the policies that they vote for. I would like to thank Senator Dave Marsden and Delegate Plum and Pittman for their courageous stand down at the legislature to, put in legislation, stand up to the critics to help raise the minimum wage in Virginia. We were not successful this year, but we're going to be back next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. So thank you.